I don't mean to make a joke about it or anything like that, but it is a terrible thing. But people do make money one way up or one way down, unfortunately. And
Yeah.
David, you and I were discussing earlier about as people forget and they begin to fear. Remember, the Lord's in charge of our own personal economy, and I don't want people to misunderstand,
Amen.
but our own personal economy. And so we see these things happen, yet the Lord is in charge. And when panic's on the street, the believer is supposed to be looking up and looking to Jesus and looking to his
Amen.
word. Go ahead, Jacob.
I agree with what David Lister said. Unemployment is up now by to 4.3%, and they're lying about that. And if it wasn't for government job creation, it would be substantially higher, with the Dow taking a plunge by 500%. And a lot of shares, even blue chips, not looking well. However, we always try to look at the developing tide of world events in light of scriptural principles and scriptural prophecies. We, all of us, I think, pretty much believe that it was an act of divine intervention that protected Donald Trump from being killed. And it's beginning to resemble a deep state hit, but that's another issue we may be able to talk about. However, I think it was divine intervention that protected him. Now, I have my own disappointments about Mr. Trump and so forth. I'm not trying to politically editorialize. I'm simply saying I think it was divine intervention. And I said I believe that because of their duplicity in their dealings with Israel and because of their moral contamination on one moral issue after another, from pro life to traditional family values and marriage and so forth, that the hand of God is on the Democratic Party. That Democratic Party is under God's judgment. Harris has raised 310 million, by far outraising Donald Trump. The media is on her side. They're lying. They're unbelievably lying. She's actually said that Trump is responsible for these latest unemployment figures. How absurd. They're blaming Donald Trump for the border crisis. How absurd. The bold-faced liars from a woman who's a bold-faced liar lied to all of us about the mental competence of Biden, her boss. Be that as it may, the liar continues to lie, but God's judgment continues to fall. When the economy gets hit, and it's not just the Fed, which is incompetent. Doesn't matter if it was Greenspan. It doesn't matter if it was um, crazy Janet. It doesn't matter if it is Powell. The Fed is as incompetent as it is corrupt and completely unconstitutional anyway. Nonetheless, I believe that what is happening economically and the threat of recession is going to obviously be a factor in the election. I believe that God is allowing it, God is causing it, it is his hand in order to undermine the Democratic Party. They're under God's judgment. Now, I do think, and I've said consistently, there's a very real possibility Donald Trump could lose, that the RNC is no good, it's no better than the DNC. But I do believe the Democratic Party is under God's judgment and there's a spiritual battle going on. Not that I'm prophesying that Mr. Trump is going to win, he could lose. However, I do see God's hand in this. I see God's hand in preserving his life. I see God's hand in the death of Sheila Jackson Lee. I see God's hand in the calamity that surrounded the Biden withdrawal from the election. And I see God's hand in what is happening economically and with the unemployment figures. I do see it as God's hand. Nate Silver, the statistician, said now the election is no longer favoring Trump. It has become a draw. And of course, most of the polls are rigged. Not all of them, but nearly all of them are, of course, rigged. We can't believe what any of these people are saying, pretty much, limited exception. However, that's not important. It is only important what it says in Daniel chapter 2. He establishes kings and removes kings. I have no doubt that the Democratic Party has made itself the enemy of God, and God has made himself the enemy of the liberal establishment and the Democratic Party. There's going to be a judge on the media, on corporate America, and there is a judge on the liberal establishment. You are seeing a declining viewership in the mainstream media. For the first time of independent, Newsmax was number one of digital news of digital television news. Newsmax was number one. MSNBC, CNN continue to decline. They're not going to recover. The networks are stagnated. We are seeing God's judgment, and I believe it is going to come on Google, and it's going to come on Alphabet, and it's going to come on Meta. Um, to what degree, I don't know, but I have no doubt that God is going to use the economy to damage the Democratic Party. It will inevitably affect the electability of Harris. But the main thing is to pray. The main thing is to pray that that wicked, wicked woman, that daughter of Satan, is not elected.